Hey, Midwest Picker here. It's been a long time since I've told a Midwest Picker story. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're a regular subscriber, regular viewer, welcome. I know you've been waiting a long time for this, but you wouldn't believe how long it takes to download the special effects, the photos, the GIFs, the sounds. It takes a long time. So this is Midwest Picker Stories. These are 100% true stories that either happened to me or I was there when they happened. These are events that happened in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Not earth-shattering, not newsworthy, kinda you had to be there type of stories. But they're pretty funny, crazy, weird, bizarre. Some are really gross. Some of them are related to my work in nursing homes and healthcare as an RN, and others are not. So this one is not. This goes under the category, do not try this at home. This is just for entertainment purposes only. If you did try this at home, you'd probably end up in jail. The names of the people involved in this story have been changed to protect their privacy, and all the photos that I show are not actual photos. So this story takes place in September around 1989, 1990, I'm not exactly sure. But in Michigan, the statute of limitations for nonviolent crime is 10 years, so I feel pretty safe sharing this story with you. Now, back in the day, I worked at a local grocery store and worked with mostly guys. And one day, one of my friends walked up to me and said, "Hey Dave, you want to go fishing with us on Saturday?" I said, "Sure, sounds like a ball. Let's go do it." Now, we were young. We were 22, 23 years old, and back in the 90s, when you were that young, we made a lot of bad decisions. And we live in Michigan, so fishing is everywhere, year-round. You can go ice fishing, you can go fishing in the spring, summer, fall. There's all different ways. You can go out on the big lake, Lake Michigan, which is the size of an ocean, or you can go fishing in small ponds or lakes or streams. There's a lot of opportunities to fish in Michigan. Now, there's two ways to go fishing. Either you drive and you're in charge of everything, or somebody else drives and you just ride along. The problem with that is, if somebody else is in charge and you're just riding along and somebody else is driving, they choose when to leave, where you're going, how you're going to fish, and how long you're going to be out there before you come home. So keep that in mind. So on Saturday, got up bright and early, went over to Tim's house and met up with Aaron, not the real names. We were just kind of talking, smoking cigarettes, kind of discussing what we're going to do for the day. And then Tim said, "All right, let's go." And we jumped into Tim's Jeep. Now, stupid me, before I got to Tim's house, I never asked them where we were going or what we were fishing for. I was just in for the ride. Now, Tim's Jeep is no ordinary Jeep. This thing was really cool. I mean, it was decked out. It had these really cool steel tubular bumpers on it. Had these big giant sand tires, and it had a really big V8 engine. He spent a lot of money on this thing, and it was big and definitely made for off-road use. It was a beast. So we hit the road, Tim driving, Aaron riding shotgun, and me in the back seat. And we started down the road, and after about 5 minutes, I kind of looked down at the floor in the back seat, and I noticed there was two spears laying on the floor of this Jeep. And stupid me said, "Hey, what are these spears for?" And without blinking or turning back, Tim said, "We're going spear fishing." Now, spear fishing in Michigan on inland waters is, creeks and streams and rivers, is highly regulated and pretty much banned all the time. It's practically illegal. There are exceptions for Native Americans. We were not Native American. And this time of year, the salmon have spawned and are swimming upriver to die. And as the rivers kind of reduce to streams and the streams kind of reduce to creeks, the salmon just keep on going as long as they can. The problem is their skin is falling off, their flesh is falling off. They're literally rotting and dying as they go upriver. It's pretty gross, but Tim and Aaron were hoping that they could find some decent salmon that weren't too gross, that were still edible. After what seemed like about 20 minutes, Tim turned and drove down a dirt road. After another 10 or 15 minutes, Tim turned again down a 2-track through the woods. It's kind of like a trail wide enough for a car. I, of course, had no idea where we were, and after driving down this 2-track trail, we ended up in a big open field. So we came to a stop, and Tim kind of looked around and craned his neck and he saw a creek in that field. So we parked the Jeep in some tall weeds and we got out. Those two guys grabbed their spears and the three of us started heading towards this creek. This creek was small. I mean, you could jump over it. And I was kind of bored. I didn't have a spear. Those two guys, they're looking in the creek and they're slowly walking along the creek with their spears in hand. I'm just kind of standing there, kind of enjoying the scenery, just kind of looking around. I guess you could say I was the lookout. And Tim and Aaron, they're like 15, 20 feet away from me. And finally Tim goes, "Hey," he's really excited. "There's one, I see one." And I kind of look where he's looking, and yeah, there was a salmon, but it was disgusting. It was so gross. And Aaron just kind of dismissed him and said, "Yeah, let's keep looking." Not something I would eat. It was pretty gross. So those guys slowly meandered along the creek looking for salmon, and I'm just kind of, bird watching, looking around. And I kind of looked back to where we came from, where the Jeep was, and something caught my eye. Holy crap. About 100 yards past where we came from, past the Jeep on this trail, was a man in a trench coat in a three-piece suit walking right to us. Tim and Aaron were like now 50 feet from me, and I yelled, "Hey guys, look!" And I turned and pointed to that guy. As I'm pointing out the guy, the three of us sprint back to the Jeep. We flew in the Jeep, threw the spears down. Tim fires up the Jeep, stomps on the gas. Those tires spun so fast, all we did was throw dirt and sand up in the air and we didn't move. But Tim was pretty smart, so he kind of let off the gas a little bit. Tires got some grip and we were gone. The problem? We were heading in the wrong direction. We were going deeper into this open field and woods and trees. We had no idea where we were. We drove like maniacs, just bombing through trees, knocking down saplings, going through bushes, around corners, up and down hills. Finally, we got to this kind of like a wooded area, and we stopped, and Tim turned off the engine. We heard nothing. We waited about 10 minutes to see if we could hear like another vehicle trying to look for us, but we didn't hear anything. Our guess is that this guy was either a DNR officer or a detective. Now in Michigan, a Department of Natural Resources officer is pretty much the same thing as a game warden in other states. When we felt the coast was clear, Tim started up the Jeep very quietly, just kind of rolled out of the woods, kind of in an open field, kind of not, and we just kind of just meandered away looking for the way to get out of there. The bad news is we were totally lost in a bad way. So we rolled through the woods looking for clearings, looking for two tracks, up and down hills, kind of just wandering around, totally lost, no idea what we're going to do or where we're at. Eventually we ended up in this big empty open field, like 10 acres. And there was deep woods on one side and deep woods on the other. We had to have been at least 15 miles from our original location. We got super excited. On the other side of this field were power lines. Yes, civilization. All we had to do is go to those power lines. It's a big 50-foot wide trail underneath the power lines. Just follow those power lines. That's all we had to do. We were home free. We knew eventually if we followed those power lines, we would come to a paved road. Just jump on that paved road and we are gone. But there was a problem, of course. What would a Midwest Picker story be without a problem? Right in the middle of this field was a house. A really weird house. Kind of off the grid house. It had no power line going to it. It had no telephone lines going to it. It was just bizarre, out in the middle of literally nowhere, a house in this field. Now this house and field that was between us and the power lines was surrounded with a barbed wire fence. Also in this field was a man working this giant garden and what looked like a teenage boy working on a dirt bike. These guys were living out here. No driveway, no nothing. It was just so weird. How did they get out here and why are they out here? Now Tim was getting frustrated because he knew that DNR officer could be hot on our trail trying to catch up to us. So Tim drove as far as he could right up to the man's fence and he turned off the engine. And then Tim yells, "Hey, will you open the gate and let us through?" And he's pointing to the power lines on the other side of the property. He had to yell really loud because it's a big field and the guy's way out there. The man working the garden stopped what he was doing and he turned and looked towards us and he goes, "No." And then goes back to work in his garden. What the heck, man? All we wanted to do is pass through your property all nice and get to those power lines. And the three of us knew there was no going back. One, we were lost. We had no idea where we were. And two, we can't go back because that DNR officer is looking for us and we don't want to run into him. We had no choice but to keep moving forward. So Tim, without any warning, says, screw it. Breaking the law. Starts the Jeep back up, turns the wheel, aims it right at the big old fence post, stomps the gas, and just bombs through this guy's fence. Crashes through the fence, keeps going, goes right through his vegetable garden, dirt and vegetables flying through the air, drives across the field to the other side, blasts through the other barbed wire fence, knocking it down, and took off, and we were going down the trail, down the power lines. I grabbed the roll bar of that Jeep with both hands holding on for dear life, because when you got big tires like that and you're going fast, every little bump, every little divot, you feel it and you're bouncing, and I'm holding on. My eyes are this big and Aaron's eyes are like this big, like what are we doing? So now we were gunning it down the power lines. We were getting the heck out of there. So as we drove down these power lines pretty fast through the weeds and the dirt and the sand, we heard that distinctive sound in the background of a dirt bike. It was starting up, revving up, and you could tell it was coming our way. Now we had a good head start, but it's very difficult to outrun a dirt bike with a Jeep. And Tim knew this, so he was looking for a place for us to hide as he's driving along. And like a miracle, the trail, I call it a trail, it's like 50 feet wide, this power line trail, it kind of curved to the right, and when it did, there was kind of like a ravine or a slope where it went up a big hill on both sides, so you were kind of like in a valley. So as we drove, going around, drove down, he saw that and he cranks the wheel and he goes up. It was like 30 degrees up this big slope into the woods, knocking saplings down, boom, boom, boom. Drove about 20 feet in the woods, turned sideways and turned off the motor. This gave us kind of a great view of like the valley down below where the power lines were, and sure enough, within a few seconds we hear and see now the kid on the dirt bike driving down the power lines looking for us, and he just kept on going and we lost him. So we waited, and about 5 minutes later he circled back and he's coming back down those power lines, goes right past us. We're kind of like looking down at him, but I don't know how far it was, and he just kept on going back to his house and just kind of disappeared around that corner. So we waited because we thought, you know what if he goes around that corner and turns off his dirt bike and he's waiting for us to come out, and then he's going to jump out and get us. So we waited like 15 minutes. Nothing. We didn't hear the dirt bike. Nothing happened. So Tim started up the Jeep very quietly, idling, just kind of rolled down this big slope back down to the power lines, and we slowly started driving away. We were in the clear, but we were still lost. After what seemed about like 30 minutes, we finally came to a paved road. Yes. So we turned left, at the time was west, and we started driving down the paved road, and as soon as we hit a crossroad, there were street signs and we knew what road we were on. We were home free. We knew how to get home from there, but we didn't have any fish. So that's the story, guys. Definitely don't try this at home. This was back in the 90s. Things were a little bit different back then. No cell phones. Pretty scary at the time. I don't even know if there was service if we had cell phones back then, but that's it. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If this is your first time here, not all my stories are like this. Most of them are medical stories or funny stories, but there's a link down in the description for the playlist of all the other stories. I think you might like those. So thanks for stopping by. I greatly appreciate the support. Until next time, see ya.